The information provided on this podcast is intended to be educational and informational only and is not considered to be formal legal advice. The listener should not take or refrain from taking action based on its content. Any listener in need of legal opinion upon which to rely in decision-making should consider formally engaging an attorney to review relevant facts in detail and examine the pertinent law as it applies to those facts.
Welcome to Real Estate Milestones, where we explore fascinating topics in commercial real estate with knowledgeable industry experts. I'm your host, Ben Malik, and I'm a young real estate professional who is passionate about adding value to people's lives through the incredible power of real estate. My goal is to help you discover what the heck is going on in the industry and how you can get involved. This is Real Estate Milestones, where your future in real estate lies just around the corner. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Real Estate Milestones. Today we have Aaron Kreymer on the show. He's a good friend of mine. We met a couple of months ago and been keeping in touch ever since. He's in the construction industry, so has some expert knowledge in that field and is a LP on one multifamily deal and has invested in two single family fix and flips. So we are going to chat a little bit about investing and our investing goals, and then also get a little bit of insight into construction industry and kind of what goes on there. So Aaron, thanks for coming on the show.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for coming on. So what's your first milestone in real estate?
Sure. So, about a year and a half ago, it was really the beginning of 2021, where I was gearing up to get involved in real estate, and finally found the confidence to jump into it and purchased, a small single family property in my area, the Baltimore area. And it was, it was a lot leading up to that one point. And finally, when I got that confidence and, jumped in and started looking at properties and was able to buy that first one and fix and flip it, that was the first milestone. And that, really set the ball rolling to, to start to learn more, do more, and get more and more involved in the, the real estate space. So it was a great way to jumpstart, this career, this part of what I'm doing.
Yeah, well, kudos for jumping in and figuring it out. I guess I want to take this to what were some of the issues that came up in your first deal? I guess let's illuminate it more. What were the fears leading up to you entering your first deal? Did any of those fears materialize? And kind of what was the lessons that you took from it that you don't want to, you don't want to do again?
Yeah. So, the first moment I had some fear was when I wrote that check for the first check to buy it. That was a big check, and that was definitely, was pretty nerve wracking. But really, one of the issues with the property was it was a small property, and going into it, the reason I bought it was because it was small, so it was easy enough to purchase by my own. I didn't take any financing on it. But because it was small, it had it was harder to sell. It wasn't as, people didn't look for a property that size. And so that it was a little bit hard to sell. And that was one thing which, I was aware of, but now that I, went through that, I understand, even more just what people want, what people look for, and, what size a property is. And that plays an important part into how marketable it is, after being done. Another thing, which is, a common problem in any asset of real estate, is the schedule, right? I had a contractor in there who did a good job, but was slower than I wanted, slower than we had discussed, and had to sit there and push him to get things done, and eventually we got it done, but behind schedule. And that's always something that I've spoken to many other investors, and it's a common problem, and it's hard to find somebody who's really quality, can stick to a schedule. So that's that's an ongoing thing, and that's just certainly just something to be aware of. Because that can hurt you, not just in terms of money that you spend in holding a property while things are getting done longer than anticipated, but market conditions change, and if you're if it's too long, and just things can go not in your favor and hurt you that way too. So schedule is always an important thing.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess it sounds like you financed it all cash. You were able to buy it out. But if let's say you had to take on a private money or hard money, that it's very expensive lending with high interest rates. So a common phrase I hear is saving saving a minute or saving a day is better than saving a dollar, because when you're paying such high interest rate, that really getting the job done in a timely manner is what's gonna be the most beneficial and make the most profit, and that you really could get beat where an extra month could just cut out like all almost all the profit, depending
Yeah,
on what your interest rate is.
it's really, as you get more and more involved, your eyes are really open to seeing just how impactful a schedule is, and just how many different things play a part in what that value of the property is, and whether you can actually be successful at the end of it or not. So that's definitely one of those things which I knew where it was important. Now I really know even more so.
Yeah, definitely. Well, so was your next deal another fix and flip, or did you get into the multifamily LP deal after that?
So I got into another single family after that, prior to getting into multifamily. And that property is actually on the market right now. So that's it's done, but we're waiting obviously to sell it. And that was another, used a different contractor, and had some issues on there too, which are playing an impactful role into where we are now in the market, which has changed obviously. So that one, that was a bigger property, definitely presented more challenges just because it was older, it was bigger, and just there are a lot of things that happen with foundational issues or water or and so that presented its unique challenges, but that's on the market, and that hopefully will be gone soon. But as I got into that property, I started to realize that I really wanted to scale up and do more. And so that's when I kind of transitioned into multifamily as well. And so my mindset has gone, toward the commercial side. And obviously I need to sell this property, but I think I'm going to be moving, to the commercial side of real estate completely, after the single family gets offloaded.
Yeah, well, it sounds like a common trajectory of a lot of investors realizing that commercial has a lot more possibilities and maybe a lot more profit, and maybe fewer headaches in some respect, depending on what part of the business you're in. I guess the way I meant that is that being an LP definitely seems a lot less nerve wracking than being a GP or doing a fix and flip on your own. Well, before we chat about that, I kind of wanted to know, so you're selling it now in this market. I know that, I guess, the becoming less of a seller's market, transitioning a little bit to the buyer's market where there's less bids. It's obviously more expensive for people to get housing because interest rates are going up. So the cost of actually, home owning is more expensive. But are you seeing that compared to your first deal? Kind of like, what are your thoughts in terms of like this place in the market cycle for selling?
Yeah, I think it's very accurate. By the first deal that I had, it was a good market for sellers at the time, and that it went pretty quickly. It went well. This property, because now that more involved, and I'm watching trends and I'm seeing what's going on, and you can just see it by just searching, let's say the area that I'm in right now, just where the trends are going, and things just things went down. Properties that sold at a certain price point are you can't sell it at that point. It just it's going to be lower, and so that it pushes the costs down. There's no question about that, and that plays a big part into everything that we've been discussing. In terms of buyers, so I think once that cost goes down, it automatically kind of pushes it away from a seller's market to a buyer's market.
Hmm.
And so I think from seeing what's going on in the area of that property, it's sure that's the trend.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. This is the whole thing. Like the fix and flip business is a fun business when everything's going up. Because
Yeah.
sometimes you might not even need to add the value to get in. You could just turn around and sell it for more just because that's the way the market's moving. But obviously, to force appreciation is the way to adjust for the potential downside, but also maybe just to mitigate the loss that might happen if the market turns like it is now. So like we're kind of at that pivotal moment where like, fix and flip is going to look less attractive because the next day it might be less expensive and people are going to be waiting till the bottom or trying to time the bottom, which obviously is hard. That's the issue with the short-term business where, fix and flip, it's like, it does depend on the market versus certain real estate strategies are much longer term. You're holding it for the future, which might be the case with some multifamily syndications, but in a way, I know those syndications are still kind of rely on the market because in a way it's just a larger scale fix and flip, just with a lot of
Yeah,
different,
I heard that recently, right? That it's just just a fix and flip on a much larger scale, which is kind of true. But like you mentioned, and it's just a much longer play. It's it's a long term play, which changes kind of how those numbers work. With single family, it's quick and really depends on what it looks like right now. And with multifamily, just you have that time. You have the time to wait. Things can and like we know, things go up, things go down, and so you can play to that market. Whereas with single family, it's harder to play to that market. I mean, you have to play to the market where it is right now, as opposed to let's wait 6 months. It doesn't work like that.
right.
So
Especially
there's
because you get cash flow from the commercial real estate. So, there's something
exactly
there's something giving you that options. I know in finance and real estate, just any sort of investing, options is a valuable thing. That's just a monetary value to options because, if something changes, you can also change your business plan. But yeah.
sure.
Yeah. And so, that's, I didn't think about, it's obviously not a fix and flip, but I didn't realize how the cash flow is definitely an important aspect into the option. So that's pretty interesting. But
Yeah,
yeah,
because
I mean,
with
mhm,
single family, you don't have that cash flow unless you're renting. But if you're doing fix and flips, it's that chunk change which you get in that specific market, and that's it. It's so I'm much more. I think much more of that the cash flow type of properties that also have capital events and can be sold, but to have that cash flow, that's really the important part. And so that's really what part of what's driving me towards the commercial side.
yeah, definitely. And I guess one more thing to say about the difference between multifamily and single family is that I think is like really consequential and kind of is something that holds me up when I'm looking into investments is that the single family market is very much like the sale of single family assets is much more dependent on like sentiments and a lot of these external things around the property where like, you have a tour and you come into a house and it's like you have a family. It's like, oh, I can imagine growing my kids living here, playing on the yard, like, going to that high school, walking like a mile down the street. Yeah, I can imagine like, this neighborhood seems like pleasant enough and we're talking about the commercial real estate side, everyone is evaluating it based on the cash flow and
Right.
then, the cap rates relative to the cash flow. So it's really dependent on can we increase the net income that this property generates, which is definitely a different picture than can I imagine living here? Because, people who are buying single family homes are not doing it for an investment. They're doing it mostly to live. So, yeah, it's definitely a different mindset. So, yeah, that's another thing. It's like harder to predict what people are going to feel about something
Right.
versus
Right.
what we can make the income.
The numbers are the numbers. They don't lie. The numbers represent what that property is worth, how it's doing. For better or for worse, and that's how they're evaluated. So yeah, I agree.
Great. So so then yeah, I guess we've kind of touched on what brought you to multifamily, but how did can you just give us the details of your first deal? As much detail as you want, but and then yeah, how it's going for you and how the experience is.
Yeah. So the first deal it was a condo. So it was like I mentioned, it was small, and the reason I started with that was because it was close to home, and because it was easy to buy. In terms of the financials, I just wrote a check for that. Thankfully, I was able to. And you know, the condo. First of all, when I got started in it, like I mentioned, it was small, and I wasn't sure how it would sell, if it would sell well. And so I know now I'm never going to invest in a condo again. I just don't think it's really it doesn't make any sense at all. But those are things that you live and you learn. And so at the end of the day, we had a buyer lined up, whose financing fell through. And so if that buyer would have came through, it would have been a good deal. I would have actually made some money on it. But because that financing fell through, it got pushed another, I think it was a month or two, until another buyer was lined up. And so that little bit of time changed the trajectory of how the deal went, and I ended up losing a little bit of money on it. And so it wasn't a lot, and it was a great lesson, and again, just timing, and there's a lot that goes into it. But the way I look at it, it was the first deal. It was a loss of a little bit of money, and that money that I paid, quote unquote, was the education that I got. You really can't get anywhere else. And so I think it's important to have that type of mindset where things will just go wrong in real estate. Obviously, you want them to go good, but for things to always be flawless is just not the case. So you have to have a mindset where you take what goes negatively in a positive fashion, and because otherwise it'll just beat you down, and you never want to touch real estate again. And so with the second property that I'm in right now, like I said, we had some scheduling issues, and due to the market again, it's not looking great right now. But those are things, those things are just sometimes out of your control, specifically the market. And so it's even if it doesn't go well, I at least I know I'm not going to do single family again, I think. But these are great lessons that you just can't get anywhere else. So whether things go good or bad, the education you get by just doing it is fantastic. And here I am a year and a half later, having much greater understanding of the single family space, which has led me to the now commercial space. And those are things that you just can't get by just sitting on the sidelines. You have to be active. You have to do that. So it's been a great experience in terms of education. It's been a great experience. I kind of coined a phrase for myself that things, whether they go good or bad, things that you get involved in are a great just education tool. And so it's a big experience, I call it. It changes you. So it's got its good and bad, but ultimately it propels you down the road.
Great. So now, what's your experience with multifamily, and like and being LP? How is that experience different? What are you learning from that?
So that was as I was kind of doing the single family stuff, and I started to realize that I really wanted to do more. It wasn't as scalable as I wanted. Somehow fell into multifamily, and it was an idea that I was kind of stuck in my head for a little bit, and eventually I started to pursue it. And so at the beginning of this year, so about 7.5 months ago, whatever it was, is when I really started to actively get involved. And what that meant was, for me, was just to network, to meet people, to understand what people are doing, what the process is, all the different terms, and the language, because every industry has its own language. You have to learn kind of what things mean. LP, GP, those are things I didn't know what they meant. JV or 506B or C. Kind of like really simple things. You have to learn those things. So I started to get involved and really just network with people, talk to so many people, great people. Learned that it's a very collaborative space. People just want to help each other, talk to each other, provide resources, provide help. It's really great. And that goes into showing it's a team sport. Single family stuff is it's very lonesome. You do it by yourself. But this is a very collaborative space. And so I quickly identified that being an LP would be a great opportunity to get involved. Being a GP off the bat is a hard thing to do unless you have a couple $1 million in cash. That's great. You could use that to invest that capital. But I don't have that much capital to invest as of now. And so being an LP on a smaller scale was a great way to get started. And so that's the path I took to just get involved. But ultimately, want to find a role and find a path to a more active role. And it's been the LP experience is good. You have to find a good operator, but otherwise, if the deal is good and you do your research, ask questions, it's a great way to get started. And if one doesn't want to go further to a GP role, it's a great way to invest, and get great returns and have your money work for more money.
Right. And yeah, I think one of the advantages of being an LP is that the GP that you're investing with is doing this probably full time. This is like what they're doing. They're putting in, they have the expertise, they've done it before. They are, adding value based on a business plan that they've cultivated and honed based on, their resources and knowledge. And you get this, access to this economies of scale where, you could add a little bit of value to a bunch of different units and all the people are willing to pay a little bit more in rent. And then it just trickles down and just increases the entire, income of the property, which is obviously how, real estate's valued. So, yeah, I mean, it's definitely powerful thing to do as an investor because, I've always kind of been not skeptical that when I was younger, I realized that I couldn't call up Tim Cook at Apple and say, "What's going on with my investment?" But here, like, the person you're investing with, that what they're doing is going to create something new and, like, make something better and add value where, you kinda don't know everything that you don't know what is going behind every you hope that's what Apple's trying to do with every decision, but, there's no transparency there, which is, definitely something that's, interesting about real estate is where you can, like, you're really there, you know exactly what's happening and why it works, and, yeah, so a lot to learn there, but, yeah, I guess this is really cool because 'cause we're seeing your transition from single family to multifamily to wanting to get active on multifamily, but, and I know obviously networking is a big part of it, but how are you finding partners? Like, what's your idea for, like, a partnership and, like, what you wanna do?
So, a big part of the finding partners is definitely the networking aspect. What I've done is, since I get started in the multifamily space, I've done a lot of networking virtually, which is great. To meet people, to get to know people on a certain scale. But I think in order to actually find people to work with, you have to be a little more active, and that means trying to get in person. Going to events. So I went to an event in Chicago. Now it's probably 2 months ago. Time flies quick.
Mhm.
But went to an event which was was a multifamily event, and that was a great way. I met some people there that I have met virtually,
Yeah.
and talked to virtually and have relationship with virtually. But virtual is only so good. Is only good up till some point, a certain point. So getting there in person and meeting people and meeting new people is a fantastic way to, I really think, expedite the process of finding a real partnership. And I think it's a patience thing. It takes time. You want it to happen overnight, and nothing happens. It doesn't happen like that. It just doesn't work. So I think the process is to just get in front of people, but and just really start identifying just who you're looking for, perhaps what markets you're interested in, specific types of assets that you're interested in, and just trying to really narrow down those types of people. And I'm in the beginning of that process, but I think it just takes a lot of you have to be in person, you have to get in person, you have to really have that mindset of, oh, I need to work with somebody, I need to find somebody, and you know let's say you meet somebody new, size them up. Do they have the same goals, same passions, same, do they want the same things? And it's sometimes it's just a matter of asking a question. Sometimes it's a matter of, bringing up an idea to somebody. So you have to really, it should be proactive. The more proactive you are, I think the better chance you will have of really trying, getting together a team.
Yeah, so, are So yeah, let's bring that farther. So what are you looking for in a partner? Are you looking for someone who has more experience with than you, or someone that you can, has different skills than you that you could both start with someone together? But yeah, like what are the key things you're looking for, and what do you feel like are the skills you're missing that you want to find, and then the skills that you have that you want to bring to the table?
Sure. So I think one of the skills that I certainly have is using my background in the construction industry, is just having an understanding of materials, purchasing, with logistics, vendor relationships, things like that. And I think that that's something that is something that I can offer. People always stress in this industry is, you need to offer something to help. If you want to join a team, if you want to create a team, what can you offer? What can one offer to you? It's about helping each other. When you help somebody else, they can help you. That's what it's about. So that's something that I can offer. And I think the underwriting part is, I've done it for my single family stuff. For multifamily, it's a little bit different. But so I have some experience in the single family side. What I don't have experience with is capital raising. And I'm taking a course in it right now, actually, and hopefully, to brush up on some skills in that part of the process. So I think I can offer, my background, and I'm looking for somebody who, has, experience doing other parts of the process. Certainly, I'd love to learn, all of it, but it's one thing at a time. So I'd love to learn the other parts of it. And I think I'd like somebody with a little more experience. It would make me feel a little more comfortable. But there's also a pro of having somebody with equal experience. You can just learn together. But also, if I had to pick and choose, somebody with more experience who can, answer some questions and make sure that we're on the right path, would probably be the better way to do it. But either way probably works.
Right, and I feel the same way that I definitely would want to. That it's the part that holds me up about finding investments is the not feeling like I have the confidence to close on it just because I haven't done it before and I don't know exactly how to do it. And like I know theoretically how to do it. I've learned a ton about real estate. I understand all the concepts, but it's different than executing on a business plan. So I definitely would want to like definitely give me the confidence to know that someone is like, yeah, like I have done this before. This is how it goes. Like, and then, I think once I have one of those deals that it won't be long before I have the same confidence and I'm able to maybe even be that to someone else who's, has different skills that they can bring to the table, just, on the flip side. But in terms of your skills, could you kind of tell us a little bit about like what you do, in construction and kind of like yeah, I mean, it's definitely an important part of the industry that you work in. So just curious to see like, what does it look like from your point of view in that sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been in the industry now for about 8 years. We're coming up on 8 years, working for companies on the East Coast, working for companies that are national. And so my role, I work for subcontractors who supply material to contractors, and pretty much work in a sales and business development type role, working directly with contractors, with architects on, making sure that we're providing them with what they need. And so I've worked on, projects of all sizes and sectors. And it's provided me with a unique insight onto just, how the contractors operate, what they look for, what they need, how the schedule works, what the different language they use, and having relationships with various vendors and manufacturers, and understanding kind of products, what's needed or what's out there. And so being in the industry, helps. I think with understanding just relationships with vendors, with manufacturers, dealing with contractors, how they operate. And so I think it provides great experience into just the flow of construction, which is very different than some people in the real estate space have a great mind for finance. They come from the finance world, so they're great at underwriting, the capital raising. That's what they do. But construction is a whole other animal. It's very different than just raising some capital or underwriting a property. There's a lot that goes into it, the process and everything. So I think that's having that background helps just understand kind of how things work. And it's helped me, just doing my single family stuff. It's I'm able to jump into it and not be intimidated by how we're going to do it. How are we demoing the thing? What are we building? How are we designing? What are we buying? So it really helped me with with what I've done.
Yeah, well, that's definitely I can definitely agree with that because I understand multifamily and single family and just underwriting from the finance perspective. Like, look, like I know exactly like how to model out this business plan and like how this would look and like how to calculate the returns and how to like identify the risks. However, it's like it's so theoretical compared to like, okay, yeah, that's all great. How do you actually do it? Like, what do you actually have to bring to the table and like how
Right.
long does it actually take to get these materials? Like, I'm really thinking about it in a theoretical sense where like you would be the one to provide some color to that understanding where like, yeah, like you make that assumption, but like there's no way you can get that material in 1 month and there's no way you can get a contractor to build that in 2 weeks. And it's like, okay, well, yeah, like that totally changed the model. But at least that kind of skill together really would illuminate like and the investment and kind of yeah, like so it's interesting because I started to realize that I don't actually have the skills to or don't really have the knowledge of the part that because like I built a single family I wanted to see if I could build a single family home from scratch. So I built an entire model to figure out like if I could build a single family home. And I was like, wait, I, I don't know how much anything costs. I have no idea how to get these things.
Right.
I try to call up a builder and say like, I didn't even know what questions to really ask. So yeah, I mean, definitely a lot to learn, but it's it's interesting to get that perspective. So definitely a valuable skill.
Yeah, I think so. It's helped me a lot, in what I've been doing. I'm certain that it'll be of further use as I continue down the commercial side of things. But like you mentioned, it's knowing what to ask. What do you need to know? If you don't even know what you need to know, how do you ask the right questions to get the information? So it's a good background to have to at least know what to ask.
Definitely. Well, on that note, are you ready for the lightning round?
Yeah, let's do it.
Sweet. Okay. So first question is, what superpower would you want if you could choose any superpower?
That's a good question. I'm gonna go with invisibility.
Cool.
I think that just enables you to operate really behind the scenes. I like to do that sometimes in real life, but it's hard to do. Being invisible. So I think that would be a cool superpower to have.
Sweet. So what's your favorite book or what's the one that's helped you the most?
So I've read there's so many books, and I'm part of different groups and chats, and the amount of books that people recommend are it's a long list. But I think the one book that actually changed the course of what I'm doing with real estate and got me started is actually a book that's not even related to real estate. It's called How I Built This by Guy Raz. Guy Raz is an NPR host of a show called How I Built This, where he interviews entrepreneurs of all shapes and sizes, small, mom and pop shops to actually, huge companies, and interviews them and illustrates a story of how they got there. And so I've listened to his podcast for years, and they're always so interesting. Just provide great just information and background into a lot of the companies we utilize on a day-to-day basis. But when he wrote this book based on that podcast, I read it, and it gave me that boost of confidence to realize that I can just, if I have a passion, if I want to do something, then just go after it. You don't have to have a superpower. You don't have to have any sort of special skill. If you want to do it, you go after it. You learn as you go. And that book actually propelled me to get involved in real estate, just because I wanted to do it, didn't know how. I read it, and I'm like, you know what? I don't know how. I'm never gonna know how if I don't ask or do it. So I jumped right into it after reading that. Actually,
It's awesome. Yeah, I've definitely heard a couple of podcast episodes. They're awesome. So yeah, I didn't realize it was a book though. That's pretty cool.
yeah.
So what motivates you to continue every day?
So I think it's the big why, right? People coin that phrase as why are you doing what you're doing? And I think it's the realization that I want to use my time and money for greater things. And working as a W-2 provides a lot of opportunity, but there's constraints. So I want to be able to use my money to work for more money, to make more money, to cash flow, and to just get outside the box of W-2, get outside that realm, do more. I think there's just a lot of opportunity by trying to control your time and set your own boundaries and do what you want to do. And I think real estate is a big vehicle in that ability. And so it's about just more time freedom, and being able to do what I want when I want. That's the big why.
Awesome. So what advice would you give to someone who wants to follow in your footsteps?
Be patient, I think, is the first thing. Um, I remember when I first started, I was certain that things would take off really quick and I'd be out on my own, quite quickly. It just doesn't happen like that. If it does, it's a good luck. But it's patience is the first thing. Ask questions. You never know anything, and certainly as a beginner, very little about what there is to know. And asking questions and listening to answers is a great just tool, great skill to have. You really get to learn if you talk to people, your peers, people who are more experienced. I would say patience, ask questions, and be ambitious. Don't hold yourself back. Shoot for big goals, but have patience getting to those goals.
Awesome. So since I put you on the spot, I want to give you a chance for revenge. So feel free to ask me anything you want to know about me.
Okay. Let's see. Wow, I didn't prep for this at all. What's a favorite food? If you what's the one thing that always looks good to you?
Ooh, that's a good question. So I have a couple favorite foods. I wouldn't. I have to mention them all because it depends. But big staple, definitely sushi. I love sushi. It's my family eats a lot of sushi. Um, and yeah, it's pretty good always. I like steak. Can't help myself but have a nice steak. And then I guess my my favorite food, my most versatile favorite food is fried rice. That like I don't know if you've ever been to Benihana, but Benihana has the best fried rice. It's like super buttery, just like delicious. And like I always try to make that for myself. So like that's the one thing that like I can make actually pretty well that I have pretty often. And it's definitely one of my favorite foods. And
Interesting.
gotta give a shout out to pasta. Like it's just
Gotcha. Yeah.
pasta's super
Pasta is always a
versatile.
good thing. Fried rice is an interesting one. I don't hear that very often.
Yeah.
That's,
It's just
that's interesting.
yeah, it's definitely the butter. You can fit a lot of butter in there.
Got it.
Cool.
If you had $1 million, what would you do with $1 million?
Yeah, I would that's an easier question. I'd invest it into real estate pretty much. I would I mean we at the beginning of the episode we said how starting out with $1 million wouldn't be too bad. But yeah, I would probably want to get some probably invest it into myself, right? So invest it into a deal where I'd learned the most and like having $1 million in the industry, like a lot of people are looking for capital. So it wouldn't be too
Right.
hard, I don't think, to find someone who, would be valuable from like joining into a GP team with $1 million.
Yeah.
So definitely would find some place to invest in real estate, but maybe you'd also try out investing as an LP just for the diversity, right? If I'm going to do a value add multifamily, maybe I'd want to take that $1 million and invest it as a passive investor in industrial or self storage or somewhere where I can get like diversity across business plans and asset classes. And then, yeah, I mean, I'd even look into angel investing and or venture capital and like maybe find some exposure to ambitious companies that have the potential of being unicorns. But I'm not going to say that those are by any way like all home runs, right? Most of them fail, but maybe there's something I'm super passionate about where I can finally, be that catalyst that gets someone to the next level. Also has a chance of having very high returns and setting me up for like a very fruitful investing career.
That's awesome. I like that last one. Venture capital, that's great. That's a great way also to help people realize, their dreams. So that's a good one.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And who knows? Maybe find some coders and code up a software company too. Yeah.
That's the way to go.
Right. Yeah. Great. So yeah. Any final remarks or anything? Or where can the audience find you to learn more about you and maybe reach out? Have a
Sure.
conversation.
Yeah, find me on LinkedIn. I was a LinkedIn lurker for a long time, but as of getting into commercial real estate and just focusing on networking, try to be very active. So find me on there, drop me a message, connect with me. I always love enjoying I enjoy very much meeting with new people, especially in this space, but really any space. So you can find me on there, pretty active.
Awesome. Yeah, that's where we met too. So and
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, it's a great place. Definitely feel like out of all social medias I get to hang out on, that's the one where spend the most time because there's some it feels more productive. It feels like you're meeting people, you're actually most of the things you see are educational. It's
Yep, yep.
yeah.
It's the only social media platform I have.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, I have a couple of them, but that's the one that's pretty much the only one I use at this point. But
Yep,
yeah, it definitely took some discipline to get to that point. Well, awesome. I appreciate you coming on the show. It was great to chat and really appreciate having your perspective where, not everyone on the show is has been doing it for like a million years, but to actually see someone who you know I maybe I have more in common with or closer to your trajectory than some of the big hitters we've had on the show. So it's really valuable for me to have that perspective and for everyone listening. So appreciate you taking the time to come on the show.
for sure. It's this is part of my trying to network and just being more and more active, and I appreciate the opportunity. and it was great to be on here.
Well, thanks again, Aaron, and everybody, keep making milestones. Before you go, I just wanted to say thanks again for tuning in to another awesome episode of Real Estate Milestones. If you've been enjoying the show and you'd like to offer your support, please leave a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts. It's the best way to increase the show's visibility and help the message get out to a greater audience. I really appreciate your time and support, and keep making milestones.